A young woman sits alone in a boat, drifting slowly down a silent river. The tapestry slips from her fingers into the water. The candles tremble in the wind. Two of them, already extinguished. The river is still. Her face is calm, not frantic, not desperate, and yet something irreversible has already happened. She has made a choice that cannot be undone. The Lady of Shalott, painted by John William Waterhouse in 1888, was inspired by Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem of the same name. It is a strange haunting story. The lady lives under an unnamed curse. She cannot look at the world outside her window. She must experience it only indirectly, through a mirror. What she sees there, shadows of reality, she weaves into her tapestry. Everything remains stable as long as she obeys the rules. One day she hears a knight riding past the tower. Curious, she turns away from the mirror and looks directly out of the window. And in that moment, once she chooses to leave the safety of reflection for the danger of presence, everything changes. The tower is behind her. Camelot lies ahead. Standing between two worlds, she knows that this choice will cost her everything. At first glance, it seems like a tragic medieval fantasy, but the story of the Lady of Shalott captures the fragile boundary between illusion and reality. And this boundary is one of the oldest philosophical questions in Western thought. More than 2,000 years before Tennyson wrote his poem, the Greek philosopher Plato imagined a story that asks the same question in Book VII of his The Republic. It is a story that has inspired centuries of art and philosophy. It is known as the Allegory of the Cave. There are two worlds, the one you have known all your life and the one that is actually true. Multiple images, projections, and screens, all of these become mirrors of reality, but not reality itself. You are a prisoner of the illusion. The Allegory of the Cave, one of the most significant philosophical passages in Western literature, is presented by Plato as a dialogue between Socrates and Plato's brother, Glaucon. Plato asks us to imagine human beings living in an underground, cave-like dwelling, with an entrance high above them. They have been there since childhood. The chains prevent them from turning their heads, so they can only see what is directly in front of them. Behind them burns a fire. Between the fire and the prisoners, objects pass. The prisoners see only the shadows projected onto the wall before them. And these shadows become their reality. They name them, they debate them, they build identities around them. They do not know they are watching projections. They do not even choose what they watch. The shadows are not deception to them. They are the only thing they have ever known. Their visible world is their whole world. The narrative then asks, what would happen if one of the prisoners were freed? What would they see? Would they be able to adjust? And what would happen if they returned? In this allegory, the cave represents the world of appearances, while the world outside represents the deeper level of truth. The shadows are the images we mistake for reality. Leaving the cave represents the difficult effort required to understand the deeper structure of truth. The idea that our world might be an illusion or a carefully constructed simulation appears again and again in art, literature, and cinema. In The Matrix, humanity unknowingly lives inside a simulated reality. The world people believe to be real is actually a projection designed to keep them passive and obedient. In The Truman Show, Truman Burbank lives what appears to be an ordinary life in a peaceful town. He goes to work, talks to his neighbors, and greets the same friendly people he has known all his life. What he does not know is that his entire life is a television show. Everyone knows the truth, except Truman himself. But what if there is more to life than the shadows on the wall? Plato challenges us to imagine what would happen if one prisoner were freed. At first, the fire blinds him. He has lived in darkness his entire life. Everything feels confusing and painful. Slowly, as his eyes adjust, he begins to understand that what he once believed to be reality was only a series of shadows. Eventually, he leaves the cave entirely and steps into the sunlight. For the first time, he sees the real world. Plato's Allegory of the Cave describes a timeless journey from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, but it also describes what true education actually means. The man is blinded by the light. He suffers because the process of learning is difficult. It is painful because it requires turning the soul around, not adding more information, but reorienting one's entire understanding of reality. It requires turning away from familiar illusions. The lady's mirror provides a controlled world. Truman's town is comfortable and safe. The matrix is familiar. Knowing fractures identity. It requires questioning everything we thought we understood about the world. Neo experiences something very similar to Plato's prisoner leaving the cave. His awakening is violent and disorienting. His body collapses. His senses struggle to adapt to the harshness of reality. In The Truman Show, Truman's awakening comes with paranoia. He begins to doubt everyone and everything around him. Like the Lady of Shalott, Truman turns away from the mirror of mediated reality and searches for the truth itself. Eventually he reaches the edge of his world, a door hidden within the artificial horizon. The transition here is also painful. Beyond that door lies reality, with all its uncertainty, loneliness, and the loss of everything he has known. This is why discovering the truth is not only liberating, it is painful. Identity is built on stories. When the story breaks, the self breaks too. If the world is not what I thought it was, who am I? This is why the story of the Lady of Shalott becomes especially powerful. Like Plato's prisoners, she experiences the world indirectly. The mirror allows her to observe life without participating in it. What she sees, reflections, shadows, fragments of reality, she turns into art. Her tapestry becomes a world constructed from images. As long as she remains inside the mediated experience, she is safe. But one day she hears the sound of a knight riding past the tower, Sir Lancelot. Fully aware of the curse, she turns away from the mirror and looks directly through the window. At that moment, the system collapses. The mirror shatters. The illusion ends. She leaves the tower and drifts down the river toward Camelot. She dies before reaching it. We do not know what happens to Truman. Neo, confronted with reality, must struggle with its loss and complexity. Why do these stories end this way? That is the price of knowledge. Once you're outside the cave, you will never be the same. The pain is existential. The lady cannot return to ignorance once she has seen Lancelot in direct light. Neo cannot return to believing the Matrix is real. Truman cannot pretend the dome is the sky. Knowledge is irreversible, and that irreversibility is terrifying. Leaving the cave may mean losing social approval, losing comfort in narratives, losing a carefully constructed identity, and facing existential uncertainty. What connects the stories of Neo, Truman, and the Lady of Shalott is the moment of the choice. Neo chooses the red pill. Truman chooses to walk through the door. The Lady of Shalott chooses to turn away from the mirror and look directly at the world. And the prisoners of the cave eventually choose to remain in the darkness. In Plato's Allegory, when the freed prisoner returns to the cave to share his knowledge, the other prisoners reject him. Seeing that his eyes were blinded by the light of the sun, his fellow prisoners still inside the cave will believe that it is the outside world that is harmful. So to them, that truth is not worth seeking. To them, the outside world seems dangerous and incomprehensible. They may ridicule him or even kill. At its core, the allegory asks a fundamental question about knowledge. What does it mean to know something? What's real? What seems real? Turning toward reality means stepping into uncertainty, imperfection, vulnerability. To know means to change. Yet within all this pain, these stories carry a surprising amount of hope. Plato's cave suggests that awakening can transform us if we are willing to endure the pain and return with compassion. The Matrix tells us that the truth may be harsh, but it is liberating. The Truman Show tells us that the exit door exists. But none of these stories promise comfort, and perhaps the story of the Lady of Shalott is not entirely tragic after all. In the moment she saw the world clearly, everything changed. She was no longer a prisoner. She was no longer living inside someone else's script. She chose direct experience over reflection. She chose reality. By leaving her cave, she faced the uncertainty of the world. And she chose it anyway. And perhaps that is the real question Plato leaves with us. If the mirror shatters tomorrow, would we dare to look outside?
In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah.